Hi there, this channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and in today's video I want to go into the topic of how highly sensitive people sometimes feel like they are chosen for something special, but sometimes simply feel broken. In this video, what I want to do is continue with a topic that I touched upon a couple of videos ago around the idea that highly sensitive people would benefit a lot from taking integration and cultivation practices more seriously, because they have a system that requires more stability and more integrity in order to stay healthy. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper into some of the traits that empathic people or sensitive people show, and how these traits can do as much to break you as they can to give you a chance for reaching very high levels of self-cultivation and self-realization. First, I want to start by dispelling the usual New Age notions of being chosen, because I think that they can be quite detrimental to the work at hand. I've seen in the YouTube sphere several of these terms that are used to describe people who are highly sensitive, and to almost prop you up in a way that is not very realistic or very helpful. There's terms being used such as, we are light workers, or we are indigo children, or we are super empaths or empathic avatars. There's even a guy out there calling himself the reincarnation of an Atlantean, and which, by the way, may be true. I mean, I'm in no position to judge whether that is the case or not, but that is precisely the point. These are all claims that are based on narratives. They are not just unproved, they are in fact unprovable. And even worse than that, even if you could prove that these things are true, they really have no bearing, and they give you no basis for a workable model on how to make your life better. So, if I could prove to you that you are, as a matter of fact, an empath avatar, or whatever you want to call it, that would get you no step closer to living a life that is more integrated, more happy, more creative, and more loving. So that's to start with. This whole notion of being chosen is with these narratives about New Age nomenclature, I think, are just not very helpful at all. I think we need to grow out of these things as quickly as possible, unless they keep us entangled in some sort of fantasy land about how you're some sort of superior chosen individual, even though you have trouble with some of the basic things that quote unquote normal people can simply get on with and execute in an easy way. That said, there is something to be said about that kind of discrepancy, or the tension between the individual that is highly sensitive and perhaps therefore a bit broken, and the potential that this creates. If you remember the Harry Potter series, there's this episode where he arrives at Hogwarts for the first time, and then the sorting hat is placed on his head to figure out which of the different schools he's going to within Hogwarts. And the hat really hesitates to figure out whether Harry should be in the Slytherin school, or whether he is a, what is it called again? Oh gosh, now I'm at a loss for the Harry Potter schools. It'll come back to me. But so the hat cannot quite figure out where Harry sits, because there's a lot of darkness in him, which is typically a Slytherin type of trait, right? Assertiveness, being aggressive. Those are a lot of the traits that Harry carries within himself as the shadow. And Gryffindor is the other school, obviously. The sword of Gryffindor. So Gryffindor is more of a noble type of house that is more caring, charismatic. And what that shows is that brokenness and the shadow and big division within an individual makes for a more difficult existence, where Harry clearly has a difficult time reconciling these things. But that very division is what creates the differential, and the differential creates the potential for a synthesis into something bigger and higher. That's why he's the chosen one. Everybody else who fits squarely into whether Gryffindor or Slytherin or Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff, there you go, I do know the schools, they have no potential because there's no differential, there's no tension inside to be resolved. And tension to be resolved via division is precisely why he has this big potential within. Now, the traits of a sensitive individual which create the division in the first place are the same traits that can create the potential for resolution later down the line. So take, for example, our sensitivity, just being more sensitive, having things hit you harder than other people. So this will typically result in trauma simply because events that other people would brush off as mildly annoying can create big trauma in a sensitive individual. And so sensitivity starts by being a problem, and that creates that differential that we spoke about. Later down the line, when it comes to cultivation practices, a high degree of sensitivity means that you can do more nuanced exploration of your neurophysiology. You can go deeper into your system and you can see things more clearly, perceive more, and that's going to propel your practices and accelerate them in a great way, because a lot of the practices of cultivation are about clear perception. And just the fact that you can perceive more makes you a finer instrument. That finer instrument is more easily broken at the start of life because it's more delicate, but later on, through cultivation practices, it can make you far more perceptive and therefore accelerate your growth. You also have, as a sensitive individual, the likelihood of being more sensitive to discrepancies, injustices, or things being wrong or things not being what they should be, right? So your radar for truth is more refined. Now, once again, at the start of your life, that might be very painful because coupled with your sensitivity, whenever you see injustice in the world, things that are not what they should be, that might turn into righteous indignation or just simply hating the world for being so unfair, those kind of feeling like the underdog or whatever type of situations. But as your cultivation practices are engaged later on, sincerity for what is true, what is correct, what is wholesome is like the guiding compass that you can use in your practices to always make sure that you are coming from the right place, being sincere, doing things for the right reasons. And this wholesomeness, when cultivated, is one of the great vehicles. Any scriptures that you read in the yoga literature, Taoism, consider sincerity to be truly the guiding compass that tells you where true north sits and which orient your practices and your efforts. Apart from that, you may also have traits such as being more in tune with your environment. So you are great at perceiving the energy in a room, being more open to it, being more in tune with what's happening. When you have such a trait in the beginning, you feel like you absorb other people's energies and very often even make yourself responsible for making sure that everybody's okay. So you spill your energy out and you're leaking all the time. But later down the line, when it comes to higher states of developing your consciousness, being in tune with your environment and making sure that you are perceiving what a situation requires, make it so that your interactions are not going to be out of touch with what's happening, but rather you're going to have a harmonizing presence because you are acting in accordance to what's going on. So you are more in tune with things, you are more aligned, you are not imposing things on other people, you have perhaps less of a desire to be hierarchical and imposing, and you are more driven by other types of traits, such as creating harmony and bringing a good atmosphere, rather than thinking that because you are advanced or spiritual that therefore you can impose your will upon the situation or people around you. Last but not least, you have more likely than not less of a dominant disposition and less of a desire to be powerful and rule over others, and you are more likely driven less by that kind of power and ambition and more driven by curiosity and trying to figure how things work. So you are more creative, you are more curious. This is a typical trait of more sensitive people. Van Gogh comes to mind, for example, highly sensitive, but at the same time incredibly creative. And once again, that kind of trait can be detrimental at first, because the world is, after all, ruled by hierarchies, at least on the surface level of things. And so you might end up at the lower end of the pecking order. You might be the underdog in many situations. That's not always very helpful, not always comfortable. When it comes to cultivation practices, it also may have a detrimental effect. You might be too open to exploring things that are not helpful, things that are too woo-woo, too new age. You might end up trying funny corners of spirituality that lead nowhere. But once your creativity and your curiosity are well guided and well directed, they can really take you far, because you are really more willing to explore. And that explorative spirit is something that many people simply don't have. I can tell you about many friends of mine who are simply not attracted to these conversations at all, and they consider many of the practices that I'm engaging in to be simply strange and just weird. And we as curious individuals don't really care about that, because we simply want to figure out things and how they work. So we are driven more by fascination than driven by a hunger for power or dominance. So all those traits, as you see at the start, have the potential to break you, to make you broken, to enhance the chances of becoming traumatized, to create separation in your system. But that separation creates the differential, and therefore the potential for synthesis further down the line. And the very traits that were undermining you at the start are the very traits that can propel you to very, very high levels of self-cultivation and very, very high levels of self-realization down the line. And as I said at the start of the video, they do not require any kind of new age narratives or identifying as some sort of special person or some sort of chosen individual in order to capitalize on your self-cultivation path. So very curious about your comments, so do share them in the comment section. And as usual, if you think that this is helpful content, then you're liking, sharing, and subscribe it. Also make it far more available to others who could benefit from it. And I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. And until then, thank you for listening. Cheerio and bye-bye.